Think about the last time you woke up. What was the first thing you touched? Most likely, it wasn't your partner's hand or a glass of water. It was a glass and aluminum slab designed in Cupertino or a notification powered by Mountain View. You think you own that iPhone. You think you chose that Google account. You're wrong. The reality is they own you. Every morning, you don't check your mail or scroll through your feed because of a conscious, passionate choice. You do it because of a psychological mechanism, an invisible lock that has trapped you in a cage where the currency isn't just your money, it's your freedom to leave. Economists have a sterile name for this, switching costs, but in the real world, it's much more visceral. It's a golden cage built with the bricks of your own convenience and the mortar of your laziness. Today, we are peeling back the curtain on the convenience trap. We're going to explore how big tech transformed your desire for an easier life into a trillion-dollar fortress that no competitor can storm. By the end of this video, you'll realize that the moat protecting these tech giants isn't just their code or their servers. It's you. So before you click away, ask yourself, if you tried to delete it all tomorrow, could you actually do it? Or are you already too deep in the trap? Let's dive in. But why? Why would an intelligent person like you, someone who values their freedom and their hard-earned money, willingly accept being locked in? The answer lies in a financial term that every legendary investor from Warren Buffett to Charlie Munger has obsessed over: switching costs. In the world of finance, switching costs are the hurdles a customer faces when trying to change from one product to another. It sounds technical, almost boring, right? But in the hands of big tech, it's a psychological masterpiece. They've perfected what we call the golden prison effect. Think about it. When you first signed up for that Gmail account or bought that first iPhone, the door was wide open. It was welcoming. It was free. But as the years go by, that door doesn't just close, it locks from the inside. Let's look at the friction. Imagine you've been an Apple user for 5 years. You have thousands of photos in iCloud. Your passwords are saved in the keychain. Your health data, your credit cards, your subscriptions, everything is synced. Now imagine a new phone comes out. It's better, it's cheaper, the camera is incredible, you want it. But then you pause. You think about the pain. You'd have to manually transfer 10,000 photos. You'd lose your iMessage history. Your Apple Watch becomes a paperweight. Your paid apps, gone. You'd have to learn a whole new interface. Suddenly, that better, cheaper phone feels like a massive headache. You aren't staying with your current brand because you love them. You're staying because leaving is just too painful. That is a switching cost. It is the friction that kills competition. And here is the brilliance. Big tech doesn't need to use force. They don't need to sue their competitors out of existence. They simply make the alternative feel annoying. They make the exit so complicated that your brain chooses the path of least resistance, staying put. As an investor, this is the ultimate economic moat. A moat isn't just a big pile of cash, it's a barrier that keeps customers in and competitors out. When a company has high switching costs, they gain pricing power. They can raise the price of your storage, they can increase the cost of their devices, and you'll pay because the cost of the subscription is still lower than the cost of the chaos of leaving. But it goes deeper than just your files. It's about your identity. Have you ever noticed how green bubbles versus blue bubbles in messaging apps became a social status? That's not an accident. That is a psychological switching cost. If you leave, you're the outsider in the group chat. You're the one who breaks the features. Big tech has successfully outsourced their enforcement to your friends and family. They've built a social tax on your departure. This golden prison is beautiful from a balance sheet perspective. It creates predictable, recurring revenue. It creates a lifetime value, LTV, for a customer that spans decades. But for you, the user, It means your choices are being narrowed down by an invisible wall of convenience. You feel pampered. You feel like everything just works. And it does. It works perfectly, as long as you stay inside the walls. But what happens when the walls start to close in? What happens when these companies realize they don't just own your data, but they own the very infrastructure of your daily life? That's where the convenience trap turns into something much more calculated. Because once they have your contacts, your memories, and your habits, they have something far more valuable than your wallet. They have your attention, locked in a loop that they control. But if you think a few photos and some text messages are the only things keeping you here, you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. The real lock, the one that's worth trillions, is built on something you generate every single second, often without even realizing it. I'm talking about the new oil. And in the next part, we're going to look at how big tech isn't just providing a service, they are mining your very existence to ensure that you and your money never find the exit. Because the most dangerous prison isn't the one with iron bars, it's the one where you don't even realize you're a prisoner. Let's talk about the data ecosystem. Many people say, I use it because it's good, and on the surface, that's true. Big tech products are sleek, intuitive, and remarkably stable. But as an analyst, I have to tell you, that's only half the story. The other half is much more calculated. You aren't just using these tools because they're superior. You're using them because you can't face the nightmare of starting over from zero. Welcome to the era of digital soul sourcing. Think back to when you first started using iCloud, Google Drive, or Microsoft 365. Remember that generous offer? 15 gigabytes for free, unlimited photo backups for a year. It felt like a gift. But in the boardroom of a trillion-dollar giant, there are no gifts, only bait. By offering you free, frictionless storage, they weren't just helping you save space on your phone. They were encouraging you to move your entire life, your memories, your professional documents, your very identity, into their territory. It's a process of digitizing your soul. And once your soul is on their servers, the dynamic changes. Imagine you decide to leave. You've had enough of the subscription price hikes or the privacy concerns. You want to move. But moving in the digital world isn't like moving in the physical one. In the physical world, you hire a truck, pack your boxes, and go. In the big tech ecosystem, they own the boxes, they own the truck, and they've designed the doors to be just a little bit too narrow for your data to fit through. Trying to move 10 years of organized Google Photos to a local hard drive or a different cloud provider is designed to be a technical headache. Metadata gets lost, folders get jumbled. The sheer friction of the task is a deterrent. You realize that starting over means losing the seamless searchability of your past. It means losing the nurturing environment that made your life so easy. This is the brilliant paradox of the ecosystem. It nurtures you with convenience until that convenience becomes a cage. Take a look at the cross-device harmony. Your iPad knows what you searched on your Mac, your watch unlocks your laptop, your car displays your phone's maps. It's a beautiful, symphonic experience, but every new device you add to the chain is another deadbolt on the door. It's a lock-in effect disguised as a syncing feature. From a business perspective, this is genius. It's called total share of wallet. Big tech isn't competing for a single purchase. They're competing for your entire lifestyle. When you are all in on an ecosystem, your churn rate, the likelihood that you'll quit, drops to near zero. For an investor, a zero-churn customer base is the holy grail. It justifies astronomical price-to-earnings ratios because the revenue is as certain as death and taxes. But let's be sharp here. We need to distinguish between value and vulnerability. You receive value, yes, but you pay for it with your autonomy. They've made it so that the cost of chaos, the mental energy required to reorganize your digital life, is higher than the $9.99 a month they're asking for. They aren't winning because they're the only option. They're winning because they've made the alternative feel like a full-time job. They've turned your memories into collateral, your professional efficiency into a hostage. And if you think this is just about photos and spreadsheets, wait until you see how this plays out in the world of high-stakes finance. Because while you're worrying about your cloud storage, the world's biggest investors are looking at something much deeper. They're not looking at your files, they're looking at your behavior. They've realized that your laziness, your refusal to leave the cage, is the most predictable asset on the planet. In the next section, we're going to pivot to the investor's lens. We're going to look at how Wall Street prices this psychological moat. We'll see why even the most aggressive government lawsuits struggle to dent the armor of a company that has successfully turned its users into willing captives. If you're invested in tech or thinking about it, you need to understand the difference between a company that makes great products and a company that owns its customers' habits. One is a business, the other is a superpower. Let's talk about the economic moat of the human brain. Now, let's pivot. Let's stop looking at this as a user and start looking at it as an investor. Why is it that every time a government agency launches an antitrust lawsuit against a company like Google or Apple, the stock price barely flinches? Why does Wall Street seem so unbothered? It's because smart money knows something that the headlines often ignore. You can break up a corporation, but you can't break the habits of 4 billion people. In finance, we talk about the economic moat, that protective barrier that keeps competitors away. Traditionally, a moat was a patent, a brand, or a physical infrastructure. But big tech has pioneered a new kind of moat, the psychological moat. They have successfully converted human laziness and the desire for convenience into a line item on a balance sheet. Think about the valuation of these companies. Why do they trade at such massive multiples? It's the predictability. When you invest in a company with high switching costs, you aren't just betting on their next product, you are betting on the forced loyalty of their user base. Wall Street looks at a user not as a person, but as a recurring revenue stream with a very low probability of churn. Churn is the enemy of growth. If it's too painful for you to leave the ecosystem, if the cost of chaos we talked about earlier is too high, then your subscription fee is essentially a tax that you will pay for the rest of your life. And that is exactly how it's priced. Let's talk about the antitrust paradox. Antitrust regulators might force Apple to allow third-party app stores or force Google to stop being the default search engine. But will it matter? Probably not as much as you think, because by the time the regulators catch up, the habit is already hardwired. Even if a better option exists, the average person will choose the default one simply because it's easier. Laziness is the most undervalued asset in the global economy. When a company owns your habits, they own your future cash flow. This is why big tech companies are often referred to as quality stocks. In a volatile market, investors flock to companies where the revenue is sticky, and nothing is stickier than a system that manages your passwords, your photos, your work, and your social life, all at once. But here is the deeper macro shift you need to understand. We are moving toward a world where these companies are becoming strategic resource entities. Just as a city can't function without electricity or water, a modern economy can't function without the cloud infrastructure of Microsoft or Amazon. They have become the utilities of the 21st century. However, unlike your local water company, big tech isn't heavily regulated on their profit margins. They have utility-like necessity with luxury-like margins. That is the cheat code of the current financial era. So, when you see a headline about $1 trillion valuation, don't just think about cool gadgets. Think about the billions of tiny, invisible chains of convenience that link users to the platform. Every time you say, it's just easier to stay, you are adding a brick to that company's moat. You are making their stock safer and their valuation higher. Investing in big tech is essentially a bet on the continuation of human behavior. It's a bet that tomorrow you will still prefer the path of least resistance. It's a bet that the friction of leaving will always be higher than the frustration of staying. But this brings us to a critical realization. If the moat is built on our habits and our data, where does it end? Are we just participants in a market, or have we become the product itself? And more importantly, as an investor, when does a moat become a liability? In our final section, we're going to wrap this all up. I'm going to give you the one question you need to ask yourself before you put another dollar into these tech giants or before you buy your next device, because the line between being a customer and being collateral is thinner than you think. Let's close the loop on the convenience trap. So, where does this leave us? We've seen that big tech didn't conquer the world with armies or weapons. They did it with something far more effective, an intimate understanding of our own psychology. They built a kingdom on the foundation of our collective laziness and our insatiable desire for things to just work. As an investor, you have to respect the genius of the psychological moat. It is the ultimate insurance policy for long-term cash flow. But as a human being, you have to recognize the weight of the invisible chains. Every click, every save password prompt, and every synced device is a thread in a web that makes you more predictable, more taxable, and less autonomous. We are living in the era of the convenience trap. You are being fed the world on a silver platter, but the cost of that platter is your ability to choose a different one. Before we end, I want to leave you with one question to ponder tonight. If tomorrow, every byte of your data on the cloud simply vanished, who are you? Without your digital history, your saved preferences, and your synced habits, what is left of your autonomy? It's a choice we make every single hour. So, tell me in the comments, if you had to pick a side right now, which would it be? Convenience or privacy? Let's get a debate going down below. I'm Pep, and we're here to decode the global economy so you don't have to. If this analysis gave you a new perspective on your portfolio or your phone, hit that subscribe button. Don't let the algorithms decide what you learn next. Stay sharp, stay curious. I'll see you in the next one.